John had always been a night owl, which is why the job as a night shift security guard at St. Augustine's Hospital seemed perfect. A seasoned ex-cop, he was no stranger to odd hours and unsettling situations. His first night on the job started calmly enough, with the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant beeping of heart monitors creating a rhythmic, almost soothing backdrop. The hospital, a sprawling complex of old and new buildings, was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling daytime activity he had observed during his orientation. As he made his rounds, John felt a strange sense of anticipation, like the building itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, John first noticed something unusual. As he passed by the pediatric ward, he saw a little girl in a hospital gown standing in the hallway. She was barefoot, her hair in disarray, and she looked up at him with wide, scared eyes. John approached her gently, asking her name and where she was supposed to be. She whispered her name was Emily and that she couldn't find her mommy. John reached out to take her hand and lead her back to her room, but as he did, Emily vanished before his eyes, dissolving into thin air. He stood there, heart pounding, trying to rationalize what he had seen. He quickly checked the ward's registry, but there was no Emily listed anywhere. Shaken but determined to stay professional, John continued his rounds. In the dim light of the ICU, he saw another patient, an elderly man in a hospital gown, slowly shuffling down the hallway. The man's eyes were hollow, his expression vacant. John called out to him, but the man did not respond. As John approached, the man turned a corner, and when John followed, he found the corridor empty. The man had disappeared. A quick check with the ICU nurses confirmed John's fears. There was no record of an elderly patient matching the man's description. By now, John's nerves were frayed. He felt like the hospital was playing tricks on him. He decided to check the security footage, hoping to find some logical explanation for the disappearing patients. The footage showed him approaching the spots where he had seen the figures, but in each instance, he appeared to be alone. There were no little girls, no elderly men, just him staring into empty hallways. It was as if the hospital itself was haunted, its ghosts choosing to reveal themselves only to him. Determined to understand what was happening, John visited the hospital archives on his break. He found old records detailing numerous patient deaths in the hospital over the decades. Some of the names matched those he had seen, Emily, the elderly man. The more he read, the more he realized that these weren't just random apparitions. They were the restless spirits of patients who had died tragically or unexpectedly within the hospital walls. Each record was a testament to the hospital's dark history, filled with stories of untimely deaths and unresolved grievances. As the night wore on, John encountered more of these ghostly figures. A woman sobbing in a stairwell, her face covered in tears and blood. A young man who appeared to be trying to escape, his hospital gown fluttering as he ran, but never making a sound. Each encounter left John feeling more isolated, more terrified. The ghosts never interacted with each other, only with him, and their appearances grew increasingly unsettling. At one point, John found himself in the old wing of the hospital, a part that had been closed off for renovations. The air was thick with dust, and the shadows seemed to move of their own accord. He stumbled upon a room that had been left untouched, with medical equipment from decades past still in place. In the corner, a shadowy figure stood, its form barely discernible. John's flashlight flickered as he approached, and just as he reached out, the figure disappeared, leaving behind an icy chill. Just before dawn, John found himself back in the pediatric ward. This time, he was greeted by a nurse who had been on staff for decades. She noticed his pale face and trembling hands and asked if he was okay. Reluctantly, John shared his experiences. The nurse nodded solemnly, explaining that many staff members had encountered these spirits over the years. She assured him that they were harmless, merely echoes of the past seeking closure. However, her words offered little comfort. She shared stories of other guards and nurses who had seen the same apparitions, their lives forever changed by the encounters. Some had left the job, unable to cope with the constant presence of the supernatural. John finished his shift as the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the hospital windows. As he clocked out, he couldn't shake the feeling that the hospital's ghosts had chosen him for a reason. The events of the night had left an indelible mark on him, and he knew that future shifts would be filled with the same eerie encounters. Driving home, exhausted and unsettled, John realized that St. Augustine's Hospital was more than just a place of healing. It was a place where the boundary between life and death was thin, and where the past never truly let go. In the days that followed, John did his best to prepare for his next night shift. He researched ways to protect himself from spirits, carrying talismans and learning prayers. He spoke to other night shift workers, gathering their stories and advice. Some offered practical tips, while others shared their own ghostly encounters, further confirming that he was not alone in his experiences. When John returned for his next shift, he felt a mix of fear and determination. He was ready to face whatever the night brought, armed with knowledge and a newfound respect for the spirits that roamed the hospital's halls. As the clock struck midnight and the hospital settled into its eerie silence, John began his rounds, knowing that the ghosts of St. Brack, Augustines, were watching and waiting. The night was long, but John was resolute, determined to fulfill his duty while honoring the restless souls who shared his watch.